Hello and welcome to the 10 Secrets to Author Success Masterclass with me, your guide, Jamie Flares. I'm an author and book coach who helps creatives, coaches, counselors, healers, artists, and soul folk write books about the stories and ideas that matter most to them. I am so glad you're here. In this 40-minute pre-recorded masterclass, you'll learn about the 10 secrets of all successful authors, those traits, states, and qualities that all writers need to thrive. We'll also cover 3 things writers think they need to write a book, but actually don't. I hope you find this masterclass helpful. Let's dive in. Okay, all right, so welcome everyone. It looks like we are recording now. So I'm so excited for you to join me here today. It is March 11th, 2019, and we're talking about what it takes to become an author. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Jamie Flares. I'm a book coach. I help people write books. I'm a developmental editor, meaning I help people with the big picture ideas and the structure and the organization and the style and all of those things, all the big things when it comes to writing books. I've written my own book called Birth Your Story, and I've also been a professional writer for 15 years. My job right now and my passion is to help coaches and healers, artists and entrepreneurs write the nonfiction and memoir books that they were born to write. I'm so excited to be with you today. The reason I put this class together is because I want to share with you some of the key traits and behaviors I've seen in the successful authors I've worked with over the years. But more than that, I really would love to help you explore whether or not you're ready to commit to a book project and give you the insight around what it will take to be successful. Furthermore, I'd love to say right now at the outset that if you're on this call, it's a good chance you have exactly what you need to write your book, but you just need support to help clear the blocks and give you the confidence and the tools that you need to say a full yes. So let's just talk a little bit about becoming an author. So something like 80% or more of American adults say they want to write a book, but only 0.004% ever actually do. So this is a very small percentage. And what's up with this? You know, many people have the desire to write a book, but they don't know what it actually takes to make that dream a reality. Oftentimes they lack the knowledge, the skills, the mindset, and the support that they need in order to continue. And that is exactly what I'm here to share with you today. I'm going to break down what it takes to become an author. On this call, you'll hear 10 things that every successful author needs in order to write a book, and also 3 things that often people think they need in order to write, but they actually don't. So I'd love to share with you too, once again, that becoming a successful author is totally possible for you. In addition to sharing all this information with you today, I will just talk to you briefly at the end of the call about my work. So I have a program called Birth Your Book, and you'll hear why I tend to use birth metaphors, and my book is about birth. So you'll hear me talk about birth. I'm a former birth doula. And so I'll be talking to you a little bit about my private coaching and also my group coaching at the end of the call in case you're interested. I'd love to hear if you want to engage in the chat, where you're calling from and what brought you to this webinar. And then once again, just know that at any point you are welcome to ask any questions, share any thoughts that you have throughout. And I'll either get to the questions as they come in or at a good pause. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into these 10 essentials that all authors need in order to succeed. So the first one is having the courage to start. And honestly, I include this one because it is one of the biggest places of resistance and blocks for so many would-be writers. These are the I'm gonna write a book someday people. And I don't know if you're one of those or if you can relate or if you've heard that, but there are a lot of people out there who say, someday I will write a book. You know, they have a book dream and maybe they've mentioned, there's someone else joining, let me just add. Okay, great. Welcome. Okay, so they have a book dream and they've mentioned it to others. Maybe sometimes others have actually been begging us to write our books. And maybe we've even toyed with writing some things down, but often that's where we can stay. And with most people, they stay right here. With a huge majority, most of that 80% never passing go and never collecting that proverbial $200, which is really the payoff for committing to the epic adventure that is going all the way around life's game board. It is so easy and so safe to stay in your book vision and never have the courage to actually start. The starting line of any major project or soul-led mission can be the scariest place. And I'm curious if you can relate to that. You know, we're often not sure if our idea is good enough, if anyone will care about what we have to write, or if we really have what it takes to see our project through. And I totally get this. This fear is real. But successful authors feel this fear and they feel their doubts and they forge ahead anyways. So having the courage to start puts you in that rare 1% club of people who actually dare to turn their dreams and ideas into things, to real things. And here also you can see on the screen, there's a quote by Brene Brown, who I love immensely. She says, you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot choose both. So part of being a successful writer is having the courage to start. Okay. Let me make this screen a little larger. Okay, great. Number 2 is motivation and commitment. So here are 2 big things that we need, all essential, all writers need in order to be successful authors. So it takes a strong well of inner motivation and commitment and desire to write. You need to be willing to take your project seriously, but even more importantly, you need to be willing to take yourself seriously. Writing a book takes grit and it takes commitment. People who half-heartedly commit to a book hardly ever actually finish writing. You have to go all in. It takes a firm commitment, and authorship is not necessarily for the faint of heart. You know, being too busy is one of the most common excuses I hear writers offer for why they're not able to write their books. And I totally get it. You know, for most of us, life moves at lightning speed and we have so much on our plates already. So there's always that question of, like, do we have enough time to write? Do we have the capacity to make that commitment? And here's the thing, we have to be willing to reclaim our time as our own and to declare how we will choose to spend that same 24 hours that all of us are given in order to make a difference and in order to forge ahead on projects that really matter to us. So the only way you actually have time to write a book is if you make time to write a book and that you bring it into your schedule. You know, and we'll also talk about this a little bit more later. That doesn't mean that you have to have a totally clear schedule. You can absolutely write a book with your professional and personal commitments. You never have to let go of your non-negotiables, your priorities. But it does mean making your book a priority and organizing your life to align with this priority of yours. And what that often looks like is actually scheduling time in your days and your weeks to write and to guard those sacred spaces like a fierce mama jaguar. You know, and this really made all the difference in the world for me when I wrote my book, Birth Your Story, and I've seen it totally change the game for my clients. You have to treat this time like you would your most important life commitments. So let's pause for a moment. I wonder if you might consider, what are the non-negotiables in your life right now? What are the things that really matter to you? Maybe it's time with your kids. Maybe it's your Saturday morning movement class. Maybe it's showing up for client sessions on Thursdays and Mondays or whatever days you meet with people. So I invite you just to consider those for a moment. And then I ask you, would you be willing to make your book writing time as important as these other non-negotiables? And if the answer is yes, or if the answer is, I think so, but ideally, yes, you have this essential quality that all successful authors need. In my private coaching and in my upcoming group program, we spend time talking about how to invite writing into your life in a way that actually feels good to you and actually works for your life. We absolutely can make time and space in our lives for writing if we make it important enough, and it doesn't have to compete with those non-negotiables that you just brought to mind. You know, I'd love to touch on another point. Some people say, and you'll read this in a lot of writing books, is that if you're going to write, you have to write every day. So for some of us, this is absolutely the best schedule, and it's what we need in order to get a big writing project done. But it's not the only way. So for example, Cheryl Strayed, who's a very successful author, she's written a book called Wild, another book called Tiny Beautiful Things, and many other amazing books. I heard her recently on an interview, and she talks about how she binge writes. So she actually goes into her metaphorical writing den, usually a hotel room she checks herself into somewhere in town where she's away from her family for a few days. And she just goes into an intense writing space for 2 or 3 days and gets a lot done. So she doesn't necessarily write on a regular schedule. And the more you'll hear other successful authors talk, the more they say, yes, it's important to have a routine. It's important to stay true and committed and engaged with your writing, but not everybody's process looks the same. So the key is to really find the rhythm that allows you to stay motivated and committed to showing up for steady progress on your book project. The other thing that really helps is to have a writing container or a writing ritual that works for you. So we'll explore this more in my coaching program, but what I do personally, this is what I've found to be so successful, is that I've created what I call cave mode or creative cave mode. And so when I've decided that I need time to work on a book or work on a project for my business, I mark out in my calendar, this is my creative cave time. And during creative cave time, I turn off my phone, I turn off the internet on my computer, I clear my desk of everything that's not related to my project, and I set my timer. Like maybe it's a 90-minute session, I just go straight in. And I have been amazed at how much more productive I am by setting those boundaries for myself. So it's really a ritual. You know, I clear the space of what is going to distract, because the world is full of distractions these days. There's always going to be an incoming email, an incoming text message. You know, somebody needs something from us. So part of becoming a successful author and really committing to the project is to create these spaces, these containers for your writing where you can really dive deeply and get some effective work done. When I was writing Birth Your Story, I had a baby at home. And so what I would do is I got a sitter for maybe 3 or 4 hours twice a week. I went to the same coffee shop. I ordered the same latte. I sat in the same spot and I wrote. And so that was a container that really worked for me at that time. So it really depends on where you are in your life. But the key is to find what works for you and to develop that rhythm and ritual of continuing to come to that creative space. So all successful writers get curious about the writing containers they need and they commit to those. So I encourage you to consider what might be an effective creative cave for yourself and how to bring that into your life. So some of you might say, but wait, Jamie, I can't do this as one to my next point. But this also, I think, is essential. Committing to your book project means slowing down just a little bit, even just a little bit, because a creative process takes both action and reflection. It takes white space in our days. So creativity, and this is something that's really important to me as a philosophy in my book coaching practice, is that creativity, it's not just production mode. It's a holistic and organic process. It's much more like Mother Nature than it is like the assembly line. And so we need space for action and reflection. You know, we need space to go take a walk and think about things. We need a moment of time to ourselves to really reflect and deepen and process everything that we've been working on in our creative work. So our creative genius needs those moments of space in our lives. And we also need legit mental breaks from complex projects and creations. So in my work, I talk about these natural cycles of creativity. So I apply basically the seasons, the moon cycles, and other organic processes to the creative process, and specifically the book writing process. So I'll be sending you out all a PDF that helps you dive deeper into what we talk about today. And one of them will have the link to a resource that I share for free about the creative cycles. So there's really these 4 seasons of our writing process that we need to honor. And one of them is that taking a break and taking some space, which is akin to winter or the new moon. So I'll be sharing that with you later. But it really is important to ally with these creative cycles in order to be effective in your writing process. Okay. All right, let's go on to number 3. So number 3 is anchoring in your why. So one of the best ways to stay committed and motivated to your writing project is to do what I call anchoring in your why. And this is because purpose creates drive. Knowing why you're writing, why your project matters to you, and how it will benefit others is a huge key to unlocking that motivation and commitment you need to start and finish your book. Anchoring into your why can mean the difference between a half-finished, abandoned draft collecting virtual dust on your computer versus a best-selling book that's out there in the world actually making an impact. So anchoring in your why means getting crystal clear about why you are writing your book in the first place. What are the factors compelling you to write this book? Why does this book matter to you? Why is this worth investing your time, your energy, your resources? And what value will you bring to both yourself and the world through writing this book? And then lastly, what will it actually feel like to write and publish this book? And really, the more clearly you can root into your personal answers to these questions and actually feel them, the more likely you will be able to soar into authorship on the wings of the book eagles. And just so you know, in the accompanying PDF that I'll send out with this webinar, I have some reflection questions. So if you didn't catch all of those, they are in the PDF that I'll send you right after the call. I suggest getting super clear on your answers to these questions before you start writing. And I also encourage you or suggest that you can display this somewhere prominently in your work writing space, or even if it's the folder you have for your work, for your writing project, whatever it is, so that you can keep coming back to this anchor of why you're doing what you're doing. I'd love to share with you what I call the rave review exercise. And this is also in the PDF, but I'll explain it to you briefly. So this is a super, super powerful visioning activity to help you vision and anchor into your why. So after this call, you can open up a fresh page in your journal, a new Word document, or you can go into the PDF that I'll send you. And the idea is to imagine that your book is already written and it's been published. Maybe a month or so has passed since you published your book, and you get an email from somebody who read your book. And this person was completely transformed by your book, by your words, your ideas, your stories. And they're writing this email to you to tell you how and why your book made such an impact on their lives. So in their own voice, you write this email. And I dare you not to cry. And I double dare you not to let your inner critic come in and have something to say about this process. Okay, so that is anchoring in your why, really knowing why your project matters to you and why it will matter to others. Number 4 is passion for your topic. So this is the 4th thing you need to become a successful author. So if you're half-heartedly or mildly interested in your book topic, the chances of you actually getting through the book writing process and publication process are pretty low. But if you're really fired up about your project and you could talk about your topic for the rest of your life, your chances of success are much greater. As we've covered, it takes a lot of energy and time to write a book, not to mention the time it takes to edit, produce, and market the book as well. So it's a big commitment. You have to be passionate about your project, and that passion has to have staying power. So you can ask yourself, as you're thinking about the topics that you have, you can, sorry, I'm just adding somebody. Okay. You can really consider if this is a project, if this is a topic that you're truly passionate about. And this is, so the 5-year question is simple, am I going to be passionate about this topic, this project 3 to 5 years from now? And so if the answer is heck yes, I definitely do. I definitely will have this passion for at least 3 to 5 years, then I would say you have what it takes to become an author on this particular topic. If your answer is like, I don't know, maybe, you might want to shelve this idea or hit pause and wait for the one that's really, really got you, the one that really lights you up and has staying power. And again, don't let your inner commitment phobe, and I say that because I have one too, don't let them answer this question. Ask your soul, ask the deeper part of you that really knows which project is best for you. Okay, number 5, and I do see some questions there, and I promise I'm going to get to them. I'm so glad that you're asking. Okay, so number 5 is having a degree of expertise. So hope you like this, little buddy. So book writing is not like writing a blog or an article. It requires much more depth. So good books are written by authors who have a deep, intimate, and nuanced understanding of their subject. They've considered their subject more deeply than most people have, and they've synthesized that knowing into something that's really valuable and something that they can share with others. So you have to know what you're talking about. And this goes for books in which you share your stories, and books that you share your ideas, or your stories and your ideas. So whether you're writing memoir or fiction, you do have to have a degree of expertise and a degree of having digested and processed your material so that you can present it to other people. But here's the thing about that, because that can be really intimidating. And a lot of us, will hear the inner critic come up at this time and say, but Jamie, or to yourself, who am I? I'm not an expert. So what I will say is that the process of writing a book is actually a process of developing your expertise. So you do have to have a degree of expertise going in. So it would be difficult for me you know, I've dabbled in gardening, but I'm not an expert. Like, it would be difficult for me to choose to write like a book about permaculture right now. Like, I could, but it would be really challenging. Whereas I might choose a topic that I have a lot of information about and a lot of insight and a lot of experience with. I may have not fully processed everything or have a super, super clear idea about like everything that's going to happen in my book, because book writing is very much a process of discovery, but I have to have some degree of knowledge going in. So that's a piece about becoming a successful author. And I'll just add here, you don't have to have everything perfectly figured out to, or know everything about your topic in order to start. Okay. Number 6 is the willingness to tango with your inner critic. And I say tango, you can supply whatever dance style you enjoy, or maybe not, or whatever dance you're willing to do with the inner critic. And so the inner critic, we all have the inner critic. We all have it. No matter how much personal growth work we've done, no matter how much healing we've done, we all have the inner critic. And it's something that, you know, its essential function in our lives, in our psyche, is to keep us safe. And to it, the idea of writing a book and becoming exposed for our ideas and our stories is scary to the inner critic. And so it often sabotages our writing dreams. So again, the thing about the inner critic is that we can't eliminate it, and fighting it really just drains our energy. So we have to find a way to dance with it and find a way to manage it so that it can exist and it can give us its red flags, but it doesn't stop us and it doesn't slow us down. So this is something I work with my clients. It's the first thing we talk about when I do book coaching with people is, like, what is the flavor of your inner critic? Like, what does it have to say to you? What are your fears? And we work with that, and we monitor the inner critic as we go through the writing process, because it is often the thing that sneaks in and stops us from doing what we came to do. So we want to move, and this is what I'll offer you as a suggestion, is that we want to move from, so the inner critic lives in the ego, and I'm not going to bash the ego here. There's nothing wrong with the inner critic or the ego. It's just that sometimes it cannot serve us when we go to do big projects like this. So we want to move from this fear to more of a place of soul, courage, and heartfelt service. So what I suggest is anytime, and I offer many, many resources about the inner critic, but a simple one is to continue to go back to your why. Continue to go back to, what is your service through this book? What is the thing that you're contributing to your own life and others? And continue to stay rooted in that. Continue to listen to the inner critic, but remember that just because that thought comes up doesn't mean that you have to believe it, and doesn't mean that you have to actually act from that place. Steven Pressfield has some great books about this. One of them is called The War of Art. He also has another book called Do the Work and Turning Pro. And those are great books for managing the inner critic, he calls it resistance, managing the resistance that comes up when we dare to do something really big, like write a book. So let's move on to number 7. So number 7 is planning. So those who plan their books, this is a statistic from a study, those who actually plan out their books before they write are 60% more likely to be successful in their writing. So no one builds a successful business without creating a business plan. No one creates a successful marriage by just getting hitched to a casual acquaintance. And no one just throws a bunch of wood and metal together haphazardly to build the home of their dreams. These things take planning, just like a book, and you must build a solid foundation before you start. So same thing with writing. And it may not feel sexy to have a plan or to do all of this planning, but it is what it takes to become a successful author. This is part of what I do in my private coaching, as well as the upcoming group project group book coaching that we'll do together. So during the process of planning, you get crystal clear about who you are to write your book, what your book is about, how you will organize and structure your ideas, and who your readers are, and so much more. So you lay out that foundation, and the more clear you can get about those fundamental pieces of your project, the more success you'll have, and the more time you'll save, the more energy you'll save, and the more frustration you'll spare yourself. So planning and building a solid foundation will greatly increase your chances of success, and it'll also make you feel a lot better through the writing process. And feeling good is sexy. So, okay. So number 8. So the 8th thing we need in order to be successful writers, successful authors, is to have clarity around who our audience is. So you have to know who your book is for, how to meet them in your writing, and how to serve them meaningfully with your book. So I encourage all my clients to definitely write. So this is a little bit of a space of paradox when it comes to the writing process, is that in some ways, and this is often what I encourage people to do, is to write for yourself first. And I talk about how like our creative alliance is to our book project and to the ideas that want to come through us. But we also have to hold space for our audience, because if we don't know who we're writing for, we don't know how to reach them effectively in our books. So we want to make sure that we transmit the truth and the purest expression of what we have to say in our books, but we also want to have audience awareness. And so some of this comes in phases. So for example, in the first draft of a book, I always suggest that people really work on that transmission of truth as true as it can come through. And then the revision process is often where we refine and make sure we're more effective at reaching our audience. But regardless of that process, we want to know who our audience is at the outset, because it's going to shape what we say, what we don't say, how we say it, you know, what kinds of objections we might address, all those things in our book. And you might be saying, well, Jamie, my book is for everybody. And I would love to quote a mentor of mine, a business mentor of mine, Marie Forleo. She says, if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody. And she's got like this great Jersey accent, so that lands a little bit better when she says it. But basically, nobody's book is for everybody. Not even the Bible, not even the bestsellers of all time. No book is for everyone. So it really helps to harness and hone in on really clearly who it is that you're speaking to in your book. And you may have multiple audience segments. You know, you might say, oh, my book is for educators, but it's also for parents. And that's okay. And that's part of the process of knowing that you might have more than one audience. But it does help to really focus on one and then use your energy and attention in your book writing process to really speak to them through your writing. We go into audience clarity, both in the PDF that I'll send you later today, and then also in my coaching programs. Okay. So we are clipping right along. So number 9, so the 9th thing that it takes to become a successful author is stamina and perseverance. So this is one of the things that I talk about in my creative manifesto, which I'll also link in that PDF, is that you have to be committed for the long haul if you want to successfully write a book. So writing a book is not a 50-meter dash. It's not a sprint. It's an endurance sport. It's the Iditarod. It's one of those insane 100-mile runs that people do voluntarily that just totally blow my mind. But seriously, you do have to have stamina in order to, and perseverance in order to get your book all the way through to completion. And here's a cold, hard look at the writing process. It takes many creatives months, if not years, to write the first draft of their book. Oftentimes you can shave that time way down by having the right support, which we'll talk about in a little while. But the editing process can take up to a year. The production process also takes time, depending on whether you self-publish or traditionally publish. It can take 1 or 2 years. And then there's also promoting and marketing your book. So it is a long game. And so it really helps to have that mindset that this is a long process. It doesn't have to be grueling. If you're, I don't know how, everyone has their own relationship to snow here. So don't get too discouraged by the woman in the mountains here in the snow. But it is absolutely possible. We just have to have the right mindset. So we have to have the mindset of taking micro steps through our project. So to hold that whole process in our minds at once is like too much to really hold. So what I often find successful for writers is that it's not that, they get into their writing process and it's not, okay, I'm writing a book, like I'm writing this 300-page thing that is going to take all this, all these steps in the process to complete, but rather I'm going to write this chapter today, or I'm going to write this scene today, or I'm going to kind of clarify some pieces of my table of contents today. We take one baby step at a time, and that's how you get up the mountain. Furthermore, taking breaks and resting are absolutely crucial. So I have a lot of clients who are like, oh, but I haven't worked on my book in a week, and I'm like, are you thinking about it in the shower? Like, yep. Are you thinking about it when you go take your dog for a walk? Yep. Have you been taking some notes when ideas come to you? Yep. So sometimes writing doesn't always look like sitting down with your fingers, tapping through on your computer. Sometimes it takes reflection. Sometimes it takes waiting for something to fully articulate inside of you so that you can write it down. So it's about having this stamina and perseverance. And it's just like a relationship. You have to continue to say yes to it. Okay. So we are on to number 10. So number 10 is having accountability and support. So it's a huge myth that writers create in isolation without any support. And I'll be super honest with you. So I've written 2 books with 0 support, and it was a mess. The first one took me 5 years to complete, and I never even got it past the first draft process because I got stuck and I didn't know what to do. I had a 300-page manuscript and I didn't know what to do next. This was about 10 years ago. The second one took me 4 years to write. And again, I had no support. So I had nobody checking in on me. I had no accountability. If I put my book project away because my inner critic reared up its head and said, "Who are you to write this book?" I had no one to help me pick it back up again. I had nobody to remind me that I did have what it took to write this book. And so it took a lot longer for me to get there. Eventually I did have an editor after I made it through my first draft on my second book, and that was supportive. But even during the editing process, I was like left alone again, where I just really didn't have any support or any accountability. So having the right support saves you time, it saves you energy, it saves you resources, a whole heck of a lot of frustration. And it also increases the chances that you'll be more successful getting all the way through your project, because that's the typical story for most writers is they pick it up and they work on it and engage with it, and something happens, either life gets in the way or the inner critic comes in, and we stop and we may never start again. And so that's how you hear about, writers that have been writing for 10 years on a project and haven't moved forward. So there's different kinds of writing support. And because birth metaphors are totally my jam, I'm going to make a birth analogy here. So bear with me here. And this is just for these purposes. We're going to call you the birthing woman, and the book is your baby. And so again, if you listen to any Liz Gilbert, you'll hear, your book is not your baby, but for this analogy, we're going to use this. So your friends and family are the support that are like your partner in a birthing situation. So they love you, they support you, and they're going to the best of their ability, they're going to be there for you. But they're out of their league when it comes to birth, or in this case, a book. They don't necessarily know what it takes to write a book or to birth a baby. They love you, but they're not necessarily going to monitor your progress and make sure that this baby gets delivered. So the second kind of support you can have, both for birth and for writing your book, is, well, the book version is a writing retreat or a workshop that's just sort of standalone. So this is like the kind nurse who comes in when you're maybe like 6 centimeters dilated and gives you ice chips. And she's amazing, but she's there for like a couple minutes and then she's gone again. So a writing retreat is a lot like that. It can be amazing in the moment. It can be super useful, but it doesn't necessarily help you move ahead, or it doesn't give you that consistency of support that you might need through your entire process. The third kind of support is a writer's group. And I hope that this metaphor lands well, or this translation, but it's a lot like the other birthing moms in the maternity wing. So they're also birthing their creations into the world. And you maybe go out and you check on them and you give them like that knowing nod and like, I got you and you got me. And, I even offer each other a coping ritual or something like that, but they are also engaged deeply in their own creative process. So relying solely on other authors can be supportive, but might not give you the people, might not offer you the space holding and the expertise that you need for the whole process. So then there's a book editor. And book editors are amazing. If you find the right editor, they're amazing. But they're more like the pediatric nurses that come in right after baby's been born. They don't come on scene until you're done with your first draft. So you have to get all the way there. You have to get through the labor in order for them to show up. And so they're not necessarily going to help you through labor. And if there's no draft, or if there's no baby, there's no baby nurse. So the editor never comes on scene if you can't get to that first complete draft. And then the last source of support, and there may be others, but this is the last I'm going to talk about, is the book coach. So we are like the doulas of the book world. We meet with you when you first discover you're gestating this project. We come in at the first sign that labor is beginning, and we stay with you until your baby's born, even if you're a first-time mama and that journey takes 3 days, heaven forbid. We offer you evidence-based support. We offer emotional support, we offer professional referrals, and we help you gently move through the birth process. So no matter what kind of combination of support you have, and again, it's really about finding and getting really clear about the kind of support that you have capacity for and what you'd most benefit from. So everybody has a different combination of those sources of support. But it is important to have support. And even if it's the minimum of somebody that you love who's on your side, who is going to ask you regularly, like, hey, could you check in with me twice a month about my book project? Even that degree of accountability can make a huge difference. But the more support that you have through your book writing process, the more likely you are to be successful in writing your book. So let's take a deep breath here. I've been telling you lots of things. I appreciate you being here and listening. So those are the 10 steps, 10 things that it takes to become a successful writer. And I'd love to share with you now the 3 things that many people think you need to write, but you actually don't. So the first thing is a background in writing. So most of the people that I work with are not professional writers. They're coaches, they're healers, they're therapists, they're midwives, they're mamas, they're entrepreneurs, they're artists, they're counselors. So many of the best transformational books out there, the books that really make an impact in people's lives, are not written by somebody who has an MFA or, any background in professional writing, but they're the experts and the passionate professionals in their field who dare to write what they know down for other people to benefit from. So you do have to be a decent writer, but you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be a pro, and you don't have to have had formal training in writing. So the editing process is a huge space where your writing can be refined and strengthened. I do have a blog on my website called Shitty First Drafts, which is actually a term, I don't know if she coined it, but that Anne Lamott talks about. And Brene Brown has also talked about shitty first drafts. So nothing that we often read as like a final copy of a book is really what came out the first round. It's the product of a lot of editing and a lot of refining and revision. And so knowing that your first draft is not going to come out perfect, but trusting the editing and revision process to help your ideas and your transmission come through as clearly and as effectively as possible. So that's the first one. You do not need a background in writing. Number 2 is that you don't need no job and a clear schedule. I've heard from some people like, I'm just going to wait until I can go away in the mountains and, for a season or a year. I'm just going to wait till I retire. I'm just going to wait until my kids are grown, or, there's lots of things. And this is the inner critic talking. There's lots of things that can come through that can stall us. So this is one of those big myths. You don't need a clear schedule to write your book. You absolutely can write in your book in the life that you're currently living. You just have to make it a priority, like we talked about before. Not to say that that's easy, but it's doable. And then you have to take those steady steps to turn your book into a reality. And again, this kind of ties in with number 3, which is 100% readiness. So you don't have to have 100% readiness in order to start. It's actually kind of a myth that 100% readiness actually exists. It's rare for someone to feel 100% ready. It's a lot like having a baby. Like there's never really a perfect time. There's always another degree you could get, or training you could get, or, another vacation to take, or, maybe you let, your babies get older, whatever it might be. But that's not how the creative process works. It doesn't really wait for us to have our life tidy. It waits for us to be ready and to say that we're ready. So one of the things I suggest is to go by the soul test. And I talk about soul a lot. So your soul, or your higher knowing, or whatever resonates for you, he or she knows when it's time to write this book. She's going to keep nudging you and inspiring you and preoccupying you about this vision for your book. He or she might gently continue to insist despite all your brain's logical excuses. And your soul will often not leave you alone. So the thing about the soul is that it's quieter than the ego. So we have to get quiet enough to really hear what she has to say. Because your ego is the one that shouts and screams and says, no, and this is all the reasons, Marie Forleo also said there's people with the reasons and there's people with results. So getting past those ego reasons to not write, and to tap into that deeper voice inside of you that knows what this project is for, knows when it's time. And I suggest listening to that voice. we talk about this getting to that voice and getting also to a deep connection with the consciousness of our books in my coaching programs as well, so that this voice can really be the one that leads the charge. And I imagine that if your soul is ready for this, you might be feeling her whispers or her rumblings right now. Okay, so those are the 3 things you don't need. So let's go ahead and recap quickly. So the 10 essentials for successful authorship. So 1, having the courage to actually start. 2, being motivated and committed to continue on in your book project. Staying anchored, clarifying your why and staying anchored in that throughout the process. Having passion for what you want to write about. Having a degree of expertise, but remember, we don't have to be like steady, perfect experts in our topic in order to write. The willingness to tango with our inner critic and to continue to dance with her and love her despite her misguidance, and continue to work with her through the process. Planning, being able to plan your book before you start. Having clarity around your audience and knowing how to meet them in your book. Having stamina and perseverance to get through the process, taking one micro step at a time. And then also having the kind of accountability and support that would really best serve you. So I'd love to hear from you now. The other, and then the 3 things we talked about, I'll go back just for a moment, just to recap everything. The 3 things that we talked about that you don't need are professional writing skills or a writing background, a clear schedule, no job, no responsibilities. And then the last one is 100% readiness. So I'd love to hear from you if you'd like to share. I just did a whole lot of talking, so I'd love to hear from you. Which one of these resonated for you, or were there any ahas that you got as we went through these essentials for successful authorship? Thank you so much for watching this masterclass. I really hope you gained some valuable insight in our time together today. I'd love to hear what landed for you and what you thought. Please feel free to reach out to me at jamieflares.com. I offer an online author school, private coaching, and retreats around the world. Let's stay connected so I can support you on your authorship journey. Until next time.